If you're just joining us, I'm Dina Garvin-Smart. I am the Vice President of Marketing for Payentry. And presenting today is Brett Strauss, Esquire, and our Vice President of HR Services. Just to give you a brief introduction about Brett, I've had the privilege of knowing and working with Brett for many, many years. He transitioned into the payroll industry, like myself, out of the financial services industry about 15 years ago. Brett previously served as a regional sales, and he is our in-house attorney as well. Uh, Brett is a graduate from the University of Arizona, and he got his law degree from the Laverne College of Law. Brett is a family man. He's also affectionately known as Coach Brett. He is a wonderful family, and when you aren't seeing him working away here at Pantry, you're going to find him on the softball or baseball or soccer field with his kids, or serving our local business community as a director on our local Chamber of Commerce board. He's a great friend, colleague, and he's going to answer all things social media and your employees for you today. Take it away, Brett. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. I appreciate the kind words. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday to join me. Uh, Today, we will be talking about social media and your employees. So there's a couple things that I wanted to kind of discuss and hopefully hammer home. There's been a lot of changes over the past few years, when it comes to social media. We just have to be very, very careful with, how we are monitoring, how we're also messaging it to the employees. So we're going to cover a wide range of topics. Um, Everybody's going to be on mute, but if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll be glad to spend some time at the very end to talk about this. All right, and answer any questions that you might have. If you don't feel comfortable sharing the entire group, understandable. You can also send us an email, and I'll be glad to chat with you offline as well. All right. First and foremost, Payentry is not a law firm. The presentation today is intended for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon in reaching a conclusion in any particular area of law. The legal principles that we discuss will absolutely differ depending on where you are geographically, and sometimes depending on what industry you might be in or how many employees you have. So just keep that in mind. We're going to talk about a lot of things in general. If you do have those specific questions, though, that's when the chat box comes in handy, and I'll be glad to talk you through everything. All right. We will review and discuss the importance of having a social media policy, how to protect your organization and address actionable employee social postings. And my goal is you walk away with this with some insight on best practices and how to take some measures to be proactive and protect your business. So I think that's the biggest difference in how we manage things here at Payentry. And in our HR and compliance department, it is my goal and hope that we can proactively work through any of these situations together. There's nothing worse for me than kind of getting to the party when it's too late, when something's already on fire, when we already have a mess. Sure, we can certainly we can clean up the mess, but from more often than not, the damage is already done. So I like to make sure we have these conversations now. We can work together on making any adjustments that we might need, in our handbook, in our day-to-day policies. We can coach and train supervisors and other leadership on how to issue spot these things so that we can, prevent this stuff from happening. Because most of this stuff, most of the issues that I get involved in, on the employee side of things, are preventable, right? Just poor communication, incomplete policies lead to a lot of confusion, and when there's confusion, that's when we start getting these employee complaints and lawsuits, etc. So that's the takeaway. What if your organization has an employee who is posting harmful or defamatory information on a social channel? what do you do? Right. Well, I mean, I guess it depends, what is harmful or defamatory to you might be, you know, funny to somebody else, right? The employee might think that, posting pictures like this of, oh, I was at the football game this weekend and, you know, drinking and carrying on and so on and so forth. They might think that that's acceptable and that's, it's my private time, so on and so forth. But, for you as your organization, that might be, you know, damaging, right? And I guess it means different things to different people. So I think this is why when we were talking about, policies, what kind of business are you? You know, if this is I don't know, we'll use, you know, like if you're a medical facility, right, as a doctor's office, and you guys are, or, senior care facility, right? Part of what you do for a living is take care of individuals, right? Having employees that are, posting pictures of, um, partying and things of that nature, that doesn't necessarily, fit that culture of what you've got going on. I think there's just basics as well. Like in this sample picture here, um, you know, it could be, innocent, right? Well, but I see sometimes where it has, employees are wearing, company, logos. Maybe I have my orange pay entry shirt on and I'm, acting, inappropriately, right? That's one thing to consider. Something simple that we kind of talk about is with our employees is, we have LinkedIn and there's some other professional type of social media, um, sites, but anything that's kind of personal, we're really not talking about work, right? So if you were to look at, maybe, you find Brett Strauss on Facebook, or you find, Eric Martinez on Facebook, that's totally fine. Those are personal things and there's nothing, we're not really talking about, pay entry or work. And that's kind of off limits. I'm not snooping around, employee social media profiles, unless they give me a reason to do so, right? Um, Taken into consideration, right? Obviously, the federal law prevents employers from discriminating against employees because of their personal social media, right? So this is where that policy comes into play. This is going to be that first takeaway, right? I would strongly recommend that we have something that says, hey, look, we don't want to know about all of your social media accounts and channels, um, but please make sure that there is nothing on there that is necessarily connecting you to the organization, right? That way I don't have to get involved. I don't have to look at it. To say, oh, I work at Pay Entry and I'm posting, pictures from inside the office where there might be, confidential employee information and I'm, doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Well, then I have to get involved and look. But if it's just your personal things on your own and there's no way to tie it back to my organization, then I really don't have any concern and I'm not really looking at it. Okay. Employers may use platforms as informational background checks, on potential candidates. Absolutely. Absolutely. I do this all the time, right? We have a candidate, I'm going to be interviewing Dina for a role in our marketing department. Yeah, I'm going to see, I'm going to do a quick Google search and see what comes up and take a look. Is this somebody that I want representing my organization? Or is everything online, is all the, inappropriate, foul language? Is it all just politics? Who is this person that we are going to be welcoming in to our company, into our small family here? And do they kind of fit in, right? But if it's somebody who's just, she's out here, pictures with her, with her friends and family and with her dogs, and okay, that's great. That doesn't bother me at all. I have no business looking at it. I'm just doing a quick once over to make sure there are no alarm bells sounding. The same thing that you would do, calling references, right? References. This is one of my other, uh, pieces of advice, that I give our HR clients when we're talking about hiring practices. You should call references, right? It's not about what they give you, right, on that phone call. It's about what you don't get, right? And it works the same way here. Take a quick look at the social media, Are there any alarm bells? If there are, then maybe we want to, proceed in a different with a different candidate, right? If you're asking a candidate for references and they can't provide you three names of people who are going to answer the phone and tell you how great they are, that scares me. It makes me nervous. Okay. Dina's been, been in business for a long time. She should absolutely have three people that could tell me how great she is in a second, right? And oh yeah, Dina's awesome. That's what I expect to hear. That's good, right? And I can check that box and I can move on. So many times during the interview process when we're talking about making offers to candidates, right? I call references and I don't get in, nobody ever calls me back. And I move on. If you can't give me a phone number of somebody who's going to tell me how great you are, I'm not interested. So quick side note there, but it's the same thought process, right? Do a quick look on those channels, see what's going on. You might also find inconsistent information. I see that a lot when I'm looking at the um, social platforms during the informational period, right? The resume might tell me one thing, but when I go online, I see, different employers or different information or things that are just not congruent. And that's another red flag. Like, well, you didn't tell me that you just work. I saw a picture of you working at such and such restaurant, 2 weeks ago. You didn't mention that on your resume. Why is that? Or how, what's going on here? Okay. Um, but I think at any time you find something that is um, a red flag, I think it's always a best practice though to reach out to me, reach out to HR so we can talk through it and figure out, you know, okay, is this, if we take adverse action, if we withdraw the offer based on what we found or what we saw, is that going to put us in hot water, or do we have a business justification to withdraw the offer and or terminate employment? Okay. In California, side note, right, which is an at-will employment state, the labor code section 2922 states that any at-will employee may be terminated, with or without notice, right? So an employee can quit. They don't need to necessarily give us a 2-week notice. We can part ways with employees, should we find something that's damaging. Um, my recommendation is if we're going to take adverse action, okay, we need to be very clear as to why. Okay. I think the biggest mistake when it comes to at will and making a decision to move on from an employee or a candidate who's violating policies is that even though it's at will, we need to be very clear with the reasoning as to why we came to that conclusion, right? Because what happens is, especially in California, and I've seen it happen in other states as well. I know Florida, New York, Illinois, there have been some issues that I've seen. If you don't give the employee or the candidate a very clear picture as to why you made the decision, you're giving them the opportunity to create their own narrative, right? Which is going to be costly for you. Okay. Um, oh well, Brett, he terminated me because he only hires male employees. Isn't like any female employees. This is certainly discrimination based on sex. We're filing a lawsuit. Well, no, it's not. It's because you posted a picture, of all this inappropriate stuff going on your social media, and here's the picture, here's the video or whatnot. So if we're gonna do that, long story short, make sure that you have it documented, right? And we can certainly help. We can help you draft the notifications. We can cut and paste. Why not, right? On Saturday, October the 12th, this is what happened. This is your account. This is you, posting, offensive, you know, memes or whatever online that could be considered racist, which are a violation of our company policy. This is why a decision's been made to terminate your employment. Has nothing to do with anything else. Okay. Um, we want to just make sure that we have this conversation, that we're talking through it, so that we're clear, with what our policy means, and then when we have to have this conversation, um, we are, sending the right message to the employee, right? We don't want the employee to feel like we're snooping around on their account, But yeah, it was brought to our attention that this is what happened. Okay. And the negative publicity from a lot of these things is also very damaging. I think when you're looking at handbook policies, um, that you need to make sure that the employees understand, right? This is why we need to separate, employment from what you do on your own time, right? Yes, you can have your own opinions. You can post whatever you want on your own things. Just make sure that it's in no way going to be able to be traced back to us as the employer. Okay. But just this morning I saw something. There's a video flying around. Apparently, I guess over the weekend, the Washington Commanders played the Baltimore Ravens. Um, and apparently there's a guy, a Ravens fan that was, I don't know, probably drunk. Who knows what he was doing? Just walks up to some kid and just starts beating the crap out of him, right? And they got it on video, right? Hit this guy just because he was wearing a Commander's jersey, you know. And of course, within a day now, it's all over. They know the guy's name. They're hammering. He works for some insurance company, back east. They're hammering the employer, flooding the social media, leaving poor reviews. You better fire this guy because he's an animal and blah 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 blah. We don't need that kind of stuff, right? That's not good for anybody. You think about the amount of money, potential, obviously harm, towards the business name, lost revenue, lost clients because you've got somebody out there that's associated with your company that they can kind of trace and doing these things and somebody's got it recorded. I mean, it can happen to any of us, but I think making sure that we have these policies documented and that everybody understands what's acceptable and what's not. Um, you know, that way we don't have to, if and when we do have an issue, we can take swift action and not let things kind of spiral out of control. Okay. Um, Social media, yeah, the connections, the pictures and photos and, you know, it, it's supposed to be used for, you know, these things here, right? Connecting people and I know, especially I have a lot of family back east as well, and I think that's the one way that we can kind of all stay connected with each other, even though we don't have to see each other that often. Great, okay. But if somebody is misusing and I think a lot of these things now comes in people's perspective. Some people think things are funny, that are offensive to others. It's going to start getting very contentious here in the next few weeks as we get closer to election day with politics. Right, you're allowed to have your own opinion. You're allowed to vote for whoever you want to vote for. It's not my business to tell you to tell you what to do or how to think. You're your own individual, right? But you also have to take ownership of anything that's posted, on your account. And another thing that I hear from a lot of employees when I've gone through situations like this, right? When I've been in those termination meetings, well, this is my, this freedom of speech. I can post and do and say whatever I want. Absolutely right, you can. You're absolutely right. Okay. But as the employer, I also have the right to take action against you for violating, my core values and my company policies, right? Freedom of speech, First Amendment, all of that does is says, you're able to say whatever you want to say to avoid, criminal persecution. Doesn't have anything to do with private employment. And people get that wrong all the time, right? In these meetings when we have to bring to their attention, hey, you know, this post, you're wearing, the company logo, and you're, consuming alcohol and you're on video, making all of these statements which are clearly offensive and clearly a violation of company policy. Well, I can say whatever I want. Yeah, that's fine. Not working for me, you're not. So, that's totally cool. You want to act like that, then that's fine. We'll help you, find work elsewhere, right? Because I'm not going to be tolerating it. Okay. The same goes for, working with, you know, with your customers. If you have a business to where you're interacting with the public frequently, And that's another thing that you might want to discuss with your employees. Hey, you know what, guys? We strongly recommend that you do not, follow our customers on social media. We can be friendly. We can, kind of, help promote their business. I know on our, pay entry sites, we do sometimes follow our clients, but it's a business to business type of an interaction. And if somebody has good news, we will repost that and help bring, positive attention to what's going on in their world. But we don't follow individual employees or individuals, that work, for or that are associated with our clients, right? It's just not a good idea, right? It's their private life. If I have a private personal relationship with somebody, okay, great. But if I just have a business relationship, I think that's what LinkedIn is for, to be able to share information, business to business. I'm not going on there and trying to, say, oh, all of the payroll and HR managers for all of our clients, I'm going to go find their personal social media and kind of see what's going on. It's just not a good idea. I would make sure that we talk about that as well. Because yeah, we don't want, and the same thing, if you tell your employees, hey, if you see, if a client or something strange is going on your accounts, notify us, right? I've had this happen too. We had a sales rep, this is maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and a client was following the sales rep, and it was just awkward, right? There's just really no need. It was like, I don't know what the intentions of the client are. Could be, just incidental, just trying to be friendly. But our employee, was concerned. This is where I post, private information. I've got pictures of my family and my children. This is not a personal relationship that I have with this client. So I picked up the phone and say, hey, look, I'm sure it was, maybe just innocuous. He didn't meant nothing by it, but it's just not a good idea to kind of mix the personal plus business. And obviously we're processing payroll. We have all of your private information. We should keep the business relationship here at an arm's length to make sure that we're able to maintain confidentiality. It's just not a good idea to have those things blended if we can avoid it. Okay. Um, Another new trend that I see is, Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn also has, um, you know, mechanisms for current, and or former employees to be able to leave um, comments about working for your company, right? I'm not sure if you've seen Glassdoor. If you haven't, I would absolutely go on there and take a look, see if anybody's left some comments there for you, and if not, um, maybe you want to start your own account and add positive feedback and kind of get out ahead of that before former employees are able to go in there and kind of tee off about issues. It's important that you have a forum for people to share concerns, but also it needs to be, tactful, and there needs to be a way that we can address that. So if somebody, did have a poor experience working for you and they leave honest feedback, okay, well, it might sting. We might not like that, but it's not necessarily defamatory, right? But I think we can work together on issuing a response, right? Hey, you know what, Dina, thank you for sharing your feedback. I'm sorry that you didn't get along with Brett, your manager, that there was a conflict there. But we appreciate everything that you brought to the table here at our company. We're sorry that you chose to leave, and we wish you the best of luck, in your future, endeavors. We're working with Brett. We're implementing, training now for all of our managers here at Pay Entry, and something like that. Okay, we're addressing it. Okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe we made a mistake. Okay, but we're not getting in this, he said, she said, finger pointing. You're a terrible employee. You never did your job. We're not, mudslinging over, social media. That's not going to do anything but just tank our ability to recruit and retain, good people down the road, right? Prospective candidates, especially if you are hiring in the younger demographic, they absolutely pay attention to these social media reviews that are left by your current former employees as well as your customers. Okay, so if you are retail and you have maybe a Yelp page or a Google page to where the public, can leave comments about your restaurant or your store, or interacting with you in some capacity, um, it is very, very important, for the younger generation of employees. They put a lot of stock into that, right? Look, if why would I come and work for this restaurant if every customer in here is, this place is awful, it looks like I'm just going to get yelled at, and I'll go find a different restaurant to where the customers are not going to be yelling at me because the kitchen's making mistakes, or so on and so forth. Um, yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about, got Kermit the Frog, had a couple too many drinks here. I think that's probably the most common, right? And look, we don't have to, it sometimes gets uncomfortable having these conversations with the staff, with your employees, but I think it's best that we just tackle this head on, right? And maybe we just use a few examples and say, hey, here's what's acceptable, here's what's not. Okay. If you want to make, we can also, um, you know, suggest that they make their accounts private. That's another thing that I've seen in some of the policies that we've drafted. Hey, look, if you insist on having an Instagram to where you think, you're going to be posting pictures and, things that might be a little bit, out of bounds, then I strongly suggest that you maybe make your account private so that people can't search your name. And this is the first thing that comes up in a Google search, helping them understand, educating them, right? Obviously we're not your parents, we're your employer, but we're here to give you, a few pieces of advice on how to protect yourself and how to, act like a professional here, so that way we don't have to, have this conversation and, terminate employment, because it's not fun for anyone. Um, yeah, and I think vandalism, theft, other crimes. That's like that video that I mentioned earlier. Where, committed an assault on video. Just a horrible idea. I'm not really sure what that guy thought was going to happen. Um, by doing that. Um, I've seen, employees, um, just doing, silly things, right? Taking things from restaurants. We have a lot of restaurant clients, and people are on video, in the wine cellar, taking bottles out, you know, um, just talking about stupid things, right? We had somebody who was like, faking, ticket orders, and having the kitchen make all kinds of food, and they were just then taking it home, and recording themselves, thinking that it's funny that nobody was going to ever find this out. I just, I'm, some of the stuff's common sense, and you really can't help people that are in that mindset and that don't have any common sense. But I think there's a lot of situations too where people just don't know any better. They just think that it's funny, and they think that they can, you know, live stream everything that they're doing on Fridays and Saturday nights, and that there's no consequences at all. Um, but again, like if you're running a restaurant and a bar, and maybe this doesn't bother you, then that's fine. I think that's, another point that I wanted to kind of hammer home, is that there is not a one size fits all policy when it comes to dealing with social media, and interacting with your employees, right? I think the first thing that's a no-brainer is that we as employers, we're not following our employees, right? We should not be following them. We should not be communicating with them at all via social media, period. Okay. If your employees want to have relationships with each other, and they want to maybe follow, another employee, and hey, we've worked together for 5 or 10 years and we're friendly, okay, that's fine, right? But me as the employer, I don't follow any employees, on social media at all, okay, except for LinkedIn. And I'm certainly not sending them any kind of messages, not sending them, direct messages, or tagging them on things, or sending jokes, or things of that nature. I mean, I think that's that's kind of the first place to start when drafting a policy is making sure that we have that that side of the house clean. Is how are we as leaders of this company going to interact with our employees, right? And then we're just putting some other controls in place with the employees and helping them kind of learn the ropes and avoid stepping in any kind of mess by unintentionally um, posting something that's going to get them in hot water with us. Yeah, under the influence of drugs and alcohol, probably the most common. The most common. And again, if this is a restaurant or a bar and it's not really that big of a deal, that's fine. But if it's my dental hygienist, right, that's just getting hammered on the weekends and posting it, that just doesn't sit well with me. There's just, a level of unprofessionalism there that, I don't think is appropriate. Same thing, if I was your attorney and if I was your HR manager and you're paying me for a professional service, I'm not on social media posting memes and jokes and talking about politics and other things to where you or any of your employees that I may have interacted with can find me, right? I have some things, you find pictures maybe of my kids playing soccer and my family, but that's about it, right? And that's you have to have a certain level of professionalism, depending on the role that you fill in your organization. And I think we need to be able to have these conversations with our employees. Preferably, in my opinion, it works best during the onboarding process. Those of you that use, our payroll and HR services know that we've got the onboarding technology. We can put these policies, right? We can put, in the handbook. We can also have a standalone policy if needed, and we can address this stuff on day 1 or 2. Hey, this is what the expectations are here, and if you can't abide by these rules, then we should probably stop right here and figure out how to, you know, help you move on somewhere else because these things are non-negotiables. Um, Another one, right? So this is another thing too that happens frequently and people just don't understand. Um, with AI and with the ability for people to kind of um, access information, you also need to make sure that your employees are aware of proper protocol when it comes to working from home or what type of um, you know situations are allowed in the actual workplace. Okay. um like this picture here of somebody posting, it looks like that with a vault. Well, here at our office here in Southern California, Pay Entry, we have a policy against personal devices in the workplace. Our employees are allowed to bring their cell phone into the office, but we give everybody a basket that hangs by their cubicle, and they put the phone in the basket. Well, why is that? Well, I can't have you, right? Your phone near the computer because we have bank accounts and social security numbers and all different types of confidential um, client and company information. I'm not even going to allow you to not that I don't trust them. We do extensive, background screenings, but just the optics, right? If I were to have one of you walking through my office and you have employees that are videotaping themselves and, hey, this is cool, man. I'm just run a payroll for this company and here's their bank account. And oh my gosh, did you know that Brett's Restaurant payroll, man, is $200,000 and they have a bartender there that gets all kinds of tips. I'm gonna go work there. We don't share that stuff about our clients, about employees of our clients. And if people are misusing their devices, their phones, tablets, etc., they might inadvertently share that information, right? Like in this picture here on the screen, maybe somebody inadvertently was videotaping themselves while Dina was behind me opening the vault, and now it's online and somebody knows the password to come, or the code to be able to open the vault. That wasn't the intention, but if you don't have controls in place, things like that absolutely happen, right? They absolutely happen. I've seen restaurants, people taking selfies of, they wanted to take a selfie of like this drink that they got or this meal that came out and it looked beautiful, but you can see the table next to them, whoever somebody's giving their credit card to the server, and you can kind of, if you zoomed in enough, you can kind of piece together that, oh, that's a Visa card, and I think I might be able to make out the numbers. So things like that, clearly that wasn't their intention. Nobody wanted that to happen, but it absolutely happens. And how do we fix that now? Now we have a customer who's, incensed because their credit card information's on the internet, because we had employees that were taking photos or weren't necessarily, you know, doing what they were supposed to be doing there in the workplace. And now we have a huge mess. Physical violence, we talked about that already. There's a lot of these, similar types of posts that start, and the employees know what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. I think as the employer, the most important thing for us is just making sure that it's very clear, right? That we have clear standards as to, hey, these things here in this policy that we're going to draft together, these are non-negotiables. It is not, we're not going to do this. We're not going to have these things. And if you do, and we find out about it, then it's going to be immediate termination, because we're not going to allow you to um, put us in a position to where our customers think that we don't have any controls and that we're employing, knuckleheads who are doing whatever they want to do, after hours, and are not smart enough to, keep things kind of private and out of the public view, and bringing negative light toward our organization. Yeah, I've seen, it kind of sounds silly, but I had a meeting, I think it was maybe late last year, early this year, right? And somebody thought it was funny, right, to share, they have those websites about, mug shots, right? My hair is all out of control and I got makeup all over my face. Isn't this funny that I'm on mugshot.com? And they were, passing it around. And, one of the employees, so a younger gentleman, like in his early 20s, had a DUI, and it was just absurd. And I'm like, number one, you, Mr. Employee, shared it with your colleagues. Now they're sharing it all over the place and everybody thinks it's funny. I mean, what did you think was going to happen when you took that photo and started sending it to your buddies because you thought it was a joke? That's not funny. I mean, and now I have to take action, right? We had to talk to our client and we had to, part ways, because that's not the message that we're sending here, that it's okay to have, exercise poor judgment and, end up getting arrested over the weekend. It's not okay. It's not funny. And we're not going to tolerate that. And you don't have to tolerate that, in your business. Um, the other thing too, we're talking about work from home, okay? Making sure that you have social media policies about what, during business hours. And obviously these things are time stamped. So if I go on Facebook right now and I know that, Dina is at work, but I see Dina has, 15 posts about, what she did this weekend and, walking her dogs and so on and so forth. I have a problem. Like, Dina, it's 10:30 in the morning here in Southern California. I'm expecting that you're, handling our, the emails and phone calls that come in for our clients, but it looks like you've spent the last hour on Instagram posting photos or liking other people's photos, etc. I mean, that's not really what we're paying you for. That's not part of your job description. So I think making sure that the employees understand is that, hey, look, you can bring your phone to work, that's fine. In case if there's a family emergencies or other situations, you can step outside and use your phone, but you're not going to be, using the phone, here in the office, on the floor there when you're serving clients, in the warehouse when you're supposed to be working on, on the machines. The phone needs to be put away. And there's certainly no, surfing the internet, shopping, posting on social media, etc. during business hours, right? This is not, it's not going to happen, and it's easily discoverable. We can easily take a peek and find out, and it happens, right? And you, as the employer, just so you guys know, if this is happening on company devices, you have the authority in every state, right, to have your IT department conduct a search of the computer to find out what's been happening on your device. You can't do that on a personal device. So if they're using their own laptop, their own tablet, their own phone, we don't have authority to do that. But if these are company provided phones, company provided, iPads, computers, and if you have somebody who's just not productive, absolutely. We do that, once in a while it happens. So we're like, hey, I need to find out what's going on with this employee. They're just, the productivity is not there. We have the IT department, go in there and pull all the search history and all the timestamps. And sure enough, right, I see, employee Nick, oh, he's watching, he's a Dodgers fan. They play, in the afternoon. So he spent 3 hours watching the Dodgers game yesterday instead of actually getting his work done. Well, that's a problem, right? Big problem, or, Rika, she's on, Nordstrom buying all kinds of stuff. Who knows what's going on over there? Amazon. We can find those things and we can nip that stuff in the bud immediately, right? As long as it's a company device. So I think, again, these social media policies, making sure that they understand it's not going to be happening during business hours, and that we do have the authority, because they are our company devices, that we will temporarily poke our head in there and check to see what's going on. And, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, then we're going to have a problem. Um, yeah, I think, here's some, I wanted to take a few minutes before we get to the Q&A here, um, to just talk about some additional real life um, examples, right? And some things that you would think are innocent enough, but caused serious issues, right? We had a supervisor. This is a client situation from I think about a month or so ago. Posted a picture, right? Or even sometimes, people are posting something, they tag everybody, right? Brett posts something and he starts tagging 5, 10 different people. And it was something, political. Okay, and they thought it was funny. I think it had something to do with, and it wasn't even, about the election here in the United States. It was something that was going on overseas, and somebody saw a meme and they thought it was funny and they posted it. And, it ended up being extremely offensive to one of the employees, right? And I didn't know is not an answer. Okay. It was something, I think it had to do with the conflict in the Middle East. Somebody thought this picture was funny. They tagged somebody, not knowing that, one of the colleagues, has, I guess, heritage, um, in one of those Middle Eastern countries, and was deeply offended by what was posted. And now we have a situation. Well, I can't come, I'm not coming to work tomorrow because, this post here is, it was offensive toward my people. This is a terrorist organization. These people, are, killing our people, and, back and forth and back and forth. Hey, look, I understand completely, right? But now I have, because a supervisor, not just a rank and file employee, a supervisor thought it was funny to post something that they really didn't understand fully. They just saw this cartoon posting and thought it was funny. Now I have a huge mess, right? And, unfortunately, that, error in judgment, I can't accept that from a supervisor, right? We had to work with the client to, terminate employment there. Like, look, you've lost all the respect of your people, that if you think it's okay and acceptable and funny to post things that you really don't know what they're about, I can't, continue to have somebody like that in my organization. Um, Yeah, I think this is good. I think when we're talking about managers, when we talk to our employees, is this something, if you're going to post something, ask yourself, hey, is it, if Dina saw this, would I be super embarrassed by what I'm about to put on here? Or maybe I should just, maybe I should, if it's a joke, maybe I want to text my buddies about it, but I'm not necessarily going to put it on my social media for everyone to see. Just keep in mind, each state, okay, has different rules. California is a little bit different, obviously, than others, but for the most part, right, the employees are allowed to do whatever they want, right, on their social media. Okay. So it's that's why drafting this policy, that's why we're having this conversation. I'm trying to kind of make sure that we're clear that we're not telling employees that we're going to be monitoring all of their things, right? What happens before we hire somebody, that's a different story, right? Same thing with pre-hire background checks and pre-hire drug screenings, et cetera, right? We can do different things before we bring somebody on board. Once they are on board, then the game changes a little bit, right? I'm not going to all 130 of our pay entry employees, and I'm not searching them on Instagram and Facebook this afternoon to kind of see what I can find. No, I'm not going to do that, nor do I have time to do that. That's inappropriate. But if a client calls me and says, "Hey, Brett, do you know this employee here? You've got an employee in Kansas, and this is what I saw." um, then I have to conduct the investigation to figure out, like, okay, is this appropriate? Is this a violation of our policy? And then I want to be clear, what steps do I take? Am I talking to that employee? Am I just going to issue a written warning? Is it going to be a final written warning? And what kind of would rise to the level of so egregious that we'd have to terminate employment? And there are, different examples. It might be hard to kind of, peg that ahead of time. We might want to just, reserve the right to make those decisions together. And that's how I would draft the policy for you. But I think the employees just need to understand that there are some rules and that, we're not going to be seeking them out. We don't want to know what goes on. We're not going to be looking. So please don't do something that's going to be stupid enough to land in my lap. Because if it is, it's probably going to be pretty bad, right? If I find out what's going on, and then we're going to have an unpleasant conversation. Um, yeah, sharing proprietary information. This is another one. Okay. We had a client who was in the insurance business. I think they sell property and casualty, homeowners insurance, auto insurance. And somebody, it was a sales rep, and they were excited because they had just signed up a new customer. Okay. And they didn't get the customer's authorization. Oh, hey, I just met with Dina, and and I just sold her 5 different insurance policies for $20,000. That's not appropriate. Okay, there's a way to kind of share your excitement with having a good day at work without blowing customer confidentiality, or posting things that are going to end up causing issues with your company and or with your clients. So I think we should have a policy for that. Hey, you know what? We share our wins here internally, right? We don't have payroll sales reps. We shouldn't have insurance sales reps. We shouldn't have anybody talking about, hey, Brett Strauss just came into my restaurant and left a huge tip, right? If Brett himself, and some people do this, they want to, take screenshots of the receipt and show how generous they are. Great, right? But you as the server aren't taking screenshots of receipts and, oh, thank you, Brett, for leaving a large tip. And it's just not appropriate. But make sure that, if you have situations like that, that you're telling your employees, hey, you know what, we don't do that. We're not posting anything about, our client interactions, anything that could remotely, make somebody uncomfortable. And if there's a situation that you're unsure of, ask, and I'll be able to let you know. No, you can't post that receipt. Yes, you can, call Dina and ask if it's okay that you share that success story, because, you were able to, write them a nice insurance policy. You save them some money. They seem to be happy with us. Maybe that's part of our process too. Hey, do we have your authorization, Mr. or Mrs. Client, to use you and highlight this interaction on our social media? I think that's another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with a policy like this, is a waiver, if you will, between you and your clients. So that way, if you do want to highlight those things and you do want to post pictures, that you certainly can, as long as you have permission. Okay? Yeah, I think up to and including the termination, there's going to be a handful of things that are going to be easy, right? You're going to see it. You're going to be like, holy moly, what were they thinking? This is an easy one. Um, that doesn't happen very often, right? 90% of the time, it's going to be a gray area, and then we're going to have to talk through it together and figure out, okay, who is the employee? What role do they perform? What do we think was happening here? Was it just a misunderstanding? A minor error in judgment? How do we kind of approach this? And then we have to look at precedent. Has this ever happened before? Yeah, it happened a year or 2 years ago. Okay, what did we do in that situation? Right? Because if somebody a few years ago posted the same thing and we went straight to termination, then that's our policy. That's how we've treated it, and we can't have you know employment practices that are not in line with each other, right? Unless there's our different facts, and maybe something was this time around was a little bit more egregious or less egregious, so we can you know just chalk it up to an honest mistake and issue a written warning and not have to necessarily terminate. We talked about the posting during work hours. Um, Post employment. That's another thing too that it often gets overlooked. Okay, often. So somebody they come to you and they say, hey, you know what? I appreciate you, Brett, but I need to resign. I was offered a new job somewhere else, or I'm relocating. Thank you. Part of that process, right? Your offboarding, if you will, exit interview slash offboarding should be a conversation with the employee about post-employment expectations and social media. Hey, Brett, I see that you are on Indeed, or I'm sorry, on LinkedIn. It says that you are the vice president of HR. Well, you've just resigned that position. So can you please go into LinkedIn and please remove that, right? I don't want, you can announce your decision to part ways with the company, no problem. But I need to make sure that people know now moving forward that you're no longer affiliated with my company. Okay. Certainly you can ask that. Okay. Sometimes you're going to get some people who like, no, I'm not going to do that, and they kind of leave, or we terminate it and they're not happy. If you get somebody who's going to be a thorn and they think that now that they can use this as a way to get back at us and post defamatory things about the company once they've left, that's a whole different set of circumstances that we can work through together to make sure that you're protected. Okay? Um, yeah, things are always changing, right? There's new sites coming up, from Facebook to Instagram to Snapchat. Now it's TikTok. There's always something new, right? There's always the new shiny ball that's coming along, and there's new technology and new rules of engagement. So I think this is something, along with the handbook every year that we take a look at, is this still a good policy? Have any issues kind of come to the forefront over the past year that we need to address? What happened? How can we maybe make some changes on here to um, make this a little bit better, to tackle some of these new sites, some of these other things that have come on up, so that way, regardless of what's going on around us, we continue to maintain control of the situation, from start to finish, and we're not going to allow any employees, to kind of, you know, go on here and make a mess and think that they're going to be able to get away with causing harm to our company or to to our clients. Um, Again, with any HR issue, right? The documentation, lastly here, before we jump into the questions, um, documentation it can mean something different to each of you, right? The most important thing is to, in my opinion, think of it this way. Okay. At the very end, we're having a termination meeting with employee Nick. Okay. And we have to let him go because he violated our social media policy. Okay. Is it going to be, if we just say, hey, Nick, you know what, I'm terminating your employment. You posted something that was offensive. I heard about it from Johnny. He mentioned it. I saw a screenshot. It was inappropriate. We're letting you go. How's that meeting going to be? How effective is that going to be? What's Nick's reaction going to be? right? He's probably gonna be very defensive. What are you talking? I didn't post anything that was wrong. What are you talking about? You can't even show me what it was. What the heck is going on, right? Or if we have something that's very cut and dry. Hey, Nick, on October the 15th, right, at 4:30 p.m., which is during business hours, this was posted and we have a screenshot, right? It was during business hours, which is a violation of our policy. It was some kind of a political thing that's very inappropriate, which is also a violation. Because we have both of these things here, a decision's been made to terminate your employment. How is Nick gonna oh, all right, yeah, you got me. I posted something dumb during business hours. Clearly, you highlighted it. You completely diffuse the employee. There's nothing they can do and say. Okay. So when it comes to documentation, just keep that in mind. At the very end now, to get this across the finish line, would you rather go into that meeting with dates and timestamps and clearly, documented incidents so we can just kind of cut and paste those onto the final warning? Or are we just going to kind of wing it because we may have forgotten to write it down the first time or the second time that it actually happened? Okay. Um, all right. Let's see here. Um, Questions. Can you make hiring decisions based on political posts? Absolutely. You absolutely can, right? The pre-hire process is yours as the employer, right? That's your time to go through your due diligence, run the background check, right? Potentially the drug test, depending on what state you're in or what type of line of work that you're in. You can do a quick Google search and say, hey, you know what, during, as long as it's clear in your offer letter that, hey, you know what, during the process now, well, you're going to go through the background check. We're going to call references. We're going to do a extensive search. And if there are any red flags, we reserve the right to withdraw the offer. You certainly can. Okay. But again, I think if you find something that is, in that gray area, I think it's best that we have a conversation because some states have different rules. Okay. The general rule is if it's something that's very egregious, that there's going to be a way that we can figure out how to get off the hook and withdraw. Okay. But it is state specific. So I think if you get in that situation, it's best that we have a conversation and that you don't tackle that on your own, right? We can work together and figure out, all right, how are we going to message it? How egregious was it? All right, yep, I think this is very clear. What does your policy say? Was it clearly written in your offer letter that there were contingencies? Yes, it was. Okay, great. We have no issue now withdrawing this offer and moving on to a different candidate. Okay. Again, it's never easy. There's always going to be a little bit of a mess. So that's what we're here for, right? Is to talk through this stuff together and help you protect yourself. So when we do have to take action, that we're doing it correctly because it can easily spiral out of control, right? If we make a mistake, because different states have different rules. Okay. I'm here to help. I know for some of you, this may be your first time jumping on one of our Payentry HR webinars, and I thank you again for taking time to join me. I'm Brett, as Dina mentioned, the Vice President of HR. I'm a licensed attorney here in California. We don't offer legal advice to our clients. It's very, very good, proactive HR support. So I've seen it all. I've kind of been through everything. I know how these things can kind of spiral out of control. So my commitment to you is if something happens, if something rolls, across your desk and you're just not sure, reach out to the Payentry HR team, right? The ladies here on my team are fabulous. I'm here also as a resource for you. I'd love to be able to get on the phone, talk you through the situation so that we don't make a mistake, right? Because a lot of these issues are preventable if we just slow down for a second and cross our T's and dot our I's together. So that's all that I had for you today. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join me, and keep your eyes open. We've got some more content coming in November and December. We're going to have a legal update for 2025. I'll walk you through all of the changes that are coming for January, everything that you need to be aware of, all the things that we need to add into your handbook before January 1st. So thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.